The stories we are following at this hour. South Korea's Constitutional Court announces a groundbreaking ruling ordering the left-wing Unified Progressive Party to disband. The UN General Assembly passes a resolution demanding that the North Korean regime be brought to The Hague for crimes against humanity. And Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan says structural reforms are a must for the Korean economy. Stay tuned for these and more coming right up. Hello and welcome everyone. This is Early Edition at 6, brought to you live from Seoul. I'm Na Hyun-kyung.
And I'm Daniel Che. Thank you for joining us. We start with a historic decision by Korea's Constitutional Court. For the first time ever, the court ruled in favor of dissolving a political party.
That's right. The leftist minor opposition Unified Progressive Party, founded just 3 years ago, is no more. For our top story, here's Ji Myung-kil.
8 out of 9 judges at Korea's Constitutional Court ruled in favor of disbanding the minor opposition Unified Progressive Party on Friday. It is the first time the court has ordered the dissolution of a political party since it was founded in 1988. During a nationally televised verdict, Justice Park Han-cheol said the minor opposition party had violated South Korea's constitutional order and sought to achieve a North Korean style of socialism. The party's 4 members, including now former lawmaker Lee Seok-gi, were arrested last year on charges of trying to instigate a rebellion against the South Korean government in the event of war. As a result of the party breakup, all 5 of the party's lawmakers were immediately stripped of their seats. The National Election Commission says a by-election will be held in April to fill 3 of the seats, while the other 2 will be removed altogether. The ruling also prohibits any party with similar goals and ideologies from being established in the future. The head of the Unified Progressive Party, Lee Jung-hee, was resolute after the announcement.
I, as the chief of the party, am responsible for today's ruling. Although the government has dissolved our party, it is not going to dissolve our liberal mentality.
The nation's 2 main parties had decidedly different viewpoints on the court's decision.
It is both a victory for the Constitution and liberal democracy. We urge the UPP to reflect upon what they have done wrong. We are worried that the ruling might have undermined the freedom of a political party, which is the foundation of democracy.
Friday's groundbreaking decision by the court came after the Justice Ministry filed a petition late last year to break up the Unified Progressive Party. And many political analysts expect the decision to further deepen the rift between liberals and conservatives in the country. Ji Myung-kil, Arirang News.
Following a committee decision last month to adopt a resolution calling for the North Korean leadership to be brought to The Hague for violating human rights, the UN General Assembly also passed that resolution. North Korea quickly denounced the move. For more, here's Song Ji-san.
The UN General Assembly has voted in favor of referring North Korea to the International Criminal Court for alleged crimes against humanity.
The result of the vote is as follows. In favor 116, against 20, abstentions 53. Draft Resolution 1 is adopted.
The non-binding resolution drafted by the EU and Japan was previously approved by the Assembly's 3rd Committee, which deals with human rights. This vote comes after a UN Commission released a report in February that detailed the extent of abuses in the north, including political prison camps, torture, starvation, and mass killings. The UN Security Council will meet next Monday to discuss the resolution, but it's almost certain to face stiff opposition from veto-wielding powers, China and Russia. Because of this, watchers say that while the Assembly vote increases international pressure on North Korea, it's largely symbolic. Pyongyang's envoy to the UN lashed out at the passage of the resolution.
My delegation totally rejects the resolution because the resolution has nothing to do with promotion and protection of human rights, and it is a product of a political plot and confrontation against the DPRK.
He added that North Korea was ready for dialogue and cooperation on human rights, but said the issue was being used as an instrument for regime change. Western nations are moving to put North Korea on the UN Security Council's agenda, but China opposes the move, saying the Council is not the proper forum for discussions on human rights. The General Assembly also passed a resolution on Thursday condemning rights abuses in Syria and Iran, but did not go as far as referring them to the ICC. 송지선, Arirang News.
And Seoul's foreign ministry, in the meantime, has welcomed the passage of that UN resolution and called on Pyongyang to implement concrete measures to improve the situation. In a statement released earlier in the day, the ministry said the adoption of the strongest resolution yet reflects the international community's determination to deal with North Korea's human rights abuses. The ministry added that the South Korean government has always and will continue to urge North Korea to take specific and practical actions to enhance its human rights conditions.
North Korea's diplomatic landscape has changed a lot since current leader Kim Jong-un came into power 3 years ago. But one thing for sure, Pyongyang still remains very much isolated from the international community. Our Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee provides a deeper perspective on the reclusive regime's diplomatic front.
Getting cozy with Russia, sending a high-level delegation to South Korea, negotiating the abductee issue with Japan, and releasing American detainees. North Korea engaged in a series of unusual diplomatic overtures this year as it found itself on the outs with its longtime ally, China. But the efforts proved unsuccessful.
Led by the United Nations, North Korea came under strong pressure to improve its human rights issue. Consequently, its efforts to diversify diplomacy hit hurdles and the regime became even more isolated. I think it was a very difficult year.
Pyongyang warned of more nuclear tests to counter the latest UN push on its human rights violations.
In their attempts to eliminate the state and social system of the DPRK is compelling us not to refrain any further from conducting nuclear tests.
But analysts doubt Pyongyang will be so hasty with a nuclear test, since that would anger its allies China and Russia, although the regime will likely launch a violent protest.
Their strategy, their playbook, is to respond with force. Fight fire with fire. Another nuclear test, another missile launch. Satellite launch, I think, will be coming in 2015.
That would further delay the possible resumption of the long-stalled six-party nuclear talks involving the two Koreas, the U.S., China, Japan, and Russia. Nonetheless, experts say North Korea will be more aggressive with multilateral dialogue next year and seek diplomacy at the highest level.
In order to end its current diplomatic isolation, North Korea will be more vocal about resuming the six-party talks. In that process, it could seek a visit to China or Russia by Kim Jong-un.
Seoul's Unification Ministry echoes that view. It expects Pyongyang to use all means available for a bilateral meeting with Washington. There could also be some progress in negotiations with Japan by July, marking the one-year anniversary of opening such talks. And if these all-out efforts to end its diplomatic isolation fail, the ministry says North Korea could seek an opening by turning to South Korea. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has pledged to play a constructive role in denouncing the Korean Peninsula, denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula, that is. That came during a meeting with the Speaker of South Korea's National Assembly, Chung Eui-hwa, in Beijing on Thursday. President Xi said Beijing would do its best to restart the six-party talks aimed at getting North Korea to give up its nuclear ambitions by persuading members to come to the negotiating table. The Chinese leader also pledged to support cooperation between the two Koreas for the sake of peace in Northeast Asia.
North Korea is still widely believed to be behind the recent hacking into Sony Pictures, though the U.S. hasn't made an official announcement yet. The White House on Thursday local time did say, however, that it was seeing it as a serious issue. For more, here's Kwon So-ah.
A serious national security matter. That's how the White House labeled the cyber attack on Sony Pictures. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest said that the evidence suggests there was malicious intent behind the hacking and that it was done by a sophisticated actor. But he did not name North Korea as being that actor. He said a range of possibilities were being considered and that the Justice Department and FBI was still investigating. But all signs seem to implicate Pyongyang, and some with knowledge of the probe say their involvement has in fact been determined. A U.S. official said the hackers stole a Sony administrator's identification card, giving them access to the entire building. Another piece of information came from a North Korean defector who claims he was part of a North Korean agency called Bureau 121, which trains around 18,000 people to become members of a hacker's army. Sony, while the victim here, has not dodged criticism for canceling the theatrical release of the movie The Interview, which centers on a CIA plan to assassinate North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Some say the studio caved into the demands of the hackers and that their reaction could open up new threats of the kind against others in the future. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The nation's nuclear power plant operator says its system and related computer networks that control nuclear reactors are working fine. This follows reports from last night that crucial pieces of confidential information about employees and reactors were stolen in a hack attack and leaked online this week. The stolen data was reportedly released Monday on a blog run by a group of hackers called Who Am I? That blog is now shut down. The plant operator has asked a prosecution to open an investigation into the alleged hacking attack. A government probe is currently underway, but officials say no trace of hacking has been found yet.
Business partners face a one-day entry ban. 77.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best. With Na Hyung-kyung and Daniel Che.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
On Early Edition at 6.
Korea's finance minister has pledged to push forward with structural reforms next year as it seeks to achieve strong and sustainable growth. And those structural changes will take place in key areas such as labor and education. Our Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
Structural reform. That's what economic policymakers will focus on next year. Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan said in an economy-related ministers' meeting on Friday that the government will push through structural changes in the labor, education, financial, and public sectors in 2015 to revive the country's growth potential.
The government will raise the efficiency of the public sector and create new dynamics in the financial industry so there can be a virtuous circle between the financial sector and the real economy.
Che added that labor sector reform will center around measures to create high-quality jobs and to increase corporate competitiveness, while educational reform will focus on nurturing a workforce that caters to industrial needs. He also emphasized that pushing through structural reforms is a must for the Korean economy, although it's not an easy task.
We should overcome our fears toward changes and make a big leap, using creative ideas and alternatives.
To support the reform efforts, Che said the government will continue to work on revitalizing domestic consumption and investment while closely monitoring risks stemming from the country's snowballing household debt problem. The finance minister's remarks come just days before the government unveils its economy management plan for next year. The plan will lay out the big picture of economic policy direction and new growth forecasts for 2014 and 2015. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye says women will play a vital role in helping the president realize her vision of a creative economy. The president called on female corporate leaders at a luncheon today to put their heads together and come up with more innovative ideas. She then stressed the need to help women remain economically active after having children. She also promised government support by way of flexible work hours and financial aid for startups led by female CEOs. Now, Korea will take its push to commercialize electric vehicles up a notch next year. Following a meeting on Friday, the Energy Ministry said it will introduce electric buses and taxis for the first time in 2015 and expand tax benefits for people buying electric vehicles. A quarter of all new automobiles bought by public organizations will have to be run on electricity as well starting next year. About $20 million will be funneled by the government into R&D to double the distance electric vehicles can run on one charge, which is currently limited to 150 kilometers.
Thursday was a big day for U.S. stocks. The Dow Jones recorded its widest surge in 3 years, jumping 2.4%. Not a bad day for the S&P 500 and NASDAQ either. The Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500 both saw a gain of 2.4%, and the NASDAQ Composite a hike of 2.2%. Investors snatched up tech stocks, which led the rally with the database software company Oracle spearheading the charge. Its stock rose by more than 10%. Sony shares also rose after days of decline. The buying spree is being attributed to U.S. Fed Chair Janet Yellen's guidance that the central bank was in no rush to raise its key interest rate, even as the U.S. economy looks to be improving. The Japanese yen is undervalued by 19%, the most undervalued it's been since the year 2000. That's a steep rise from the 3% recorded last year. It's also quite a different picture from the third quarter of 2012 when the yen was overvalued by more than 8%. That was right before Prime Minister Shinzo Abe announced quantitative easing measures. Korea-based KB Investment and Securities expects the trend concerning the Japanese yen to continue into next year as well, upon expectations that the Abe administration will expand its measures after a sweeping victory in a snap election earlier this month. It's that time of the year when organizations of all kinds put out lists recapping the year's biggest stories. In the scientific world, nothing came close to Europe's Rosetta mission. Science Magazine and the American Association for the Advancement of Science said the landmark comet landing was the most outstanding scientific breakthrough of the year. They said the mission was a genuine first and opened doors for research in planetary science that could end up providing clues about the origins of the solar system and life as we know it. Among the list was a computer chip developed by U.S. tech giant IBM that imitates the structure of the human brain.
And in what can be seen as another scientific achievement, the average life expectancy across the world continues to rise. According to a recent study, people are living around 6 years longer than they were in 1990. If the trend continues, baby boys born in 2030 will live to the age of 78 and girls to the age of 85. The Lancet Medical Journal attributes the rise in dramatic improvements to health care. Those living in wealthy countries have benefited from a drop in heart diseases, while those in underdeveloped countries are dying less from illnesses like pneumonia, diarrhea, and malaria. The lifespan of the average South Korean over the past 2+ decades has gone up by 9 years to 81.
Looks like there is no such thing as bad publicity. From nut rage to nut craze, the scandal surrounding the former vice president of Korean Air has been a major headache for the company, but it's given Koreans a taste for the macadamia nut, the snack that triggered the whole controversy in the first place. Our Shin Se-min has this story.
Macadamia nuts, which were thrust into the spotlight as a result of recent nut rage incident here in Korea, have been a range of its own lately. They are flying off the shelves and selling out online. The incident that battered the career and reputation of former Korean Air executive Choi Kyung-hwan has been a boon for the macadamia nut industry in the country. Major online shopping mall G Market saw sales surge by 20 times last week compared to the week before. Large offline chains like Costco and Lotte Mart have also seen a considerable jump in demand. Suppliers couldn't be happier. More than 80% of Korea's imports come from the birthplace of the macadamia nut, Australia. The Australian Macadamia Society said in a press release that it would renew its focus on the Korean market. Hawaii's $38 million macadamia nut industry is also feeling the effects.
This week alone, we have received requests for pricing and information on our product line from 4 or 5 different groups from Korea.
And while demand is rising, some question its origin.
It's absurd, and it's unfortunate that this has become the focus of the nation when we have other real problems hurting the nation.
And as for the best way to enjoy the nuts,
yes, macadamia nuts, whether they're served in a bag or on a silver platter, it's the same great tasting, very classy nut, no matter how you have them served.
신세민, Arirang News.
There was a time in Korean history when ramen or instant noodles were used to depict a very difficult time in Korean history when we couldn't afford rice, so we'd just settle for ramen to fill our stomachs. But things have changed
it's become
quite
popular.
a lot. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I have to admit, I think I eat at least 1 ramen per week, but maybe I'm contributing to this report, which shows that Koreans are gobbling up this addictive snack in massive portions, right?
Kim Min-ji has this report.
Right, Kim Min-ji has this report. Take a look.
Instant noodles, known in Korea as ramyeon, are a popular snack food. It's a quick and simple way for busy workers and students to snag a meal. And maybe that's why Korea is at the top of the list when it comes to consumption of ramyeon. According to the World Instant Noodles Association, Koreans add an average of about 74 packets of ramen a year, or roughly 1 serving every 5 days. Vietnam came in second at 60 packets, followed by Indonesia at 57. The domestic ramen market has grown 40% over the last 5 years to about $2 billion. Koreans had already spent over $1.3 billion on ramyeon as of September this year. As for the most favorite type of ramen, 신라면, known for its spicy taste, ranked first. It was trailed by 짜파게티, 안성탕면, 너구리, and 삼양라면. However, when looking at it in total numbers, China, which boasts the world's largest population, consumed the most ramyeon at 46.2 billion packets, followed by Indonesia and Japan. Korea came in 7th at 3.6 billion. Meanwhile, Korea produced a total of 590,000 tons of ramen last year. 60% of that total went into packets and around 30% into cups. Ramen exports are also on the rise, jumping to $210 million last year, up 60% from just 5 years ago. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
TGIF everyone, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. All of the cold wave alerts have been lifted, with most of the temperatures are now above the freezing mark. Now that said, a dry weather alert have been issued along with the East Coast as well as Gyeongsang-Bukdo Province. Now as you can see here, clouds are moving in as well, and snow is expected this evening. Now, most of it will fall in the upper regions such as Gangwon-do Province, while 2 to 7 centimeters is expected in the central region, with even chances of thunder and lightning. Now, most of the precipitation is expected to clear by the morning, with the sun coming back out, and we will be hit with some strong winds though, and the mercury will dip to the low as -9 degrees on Sunday morning. Now, going over to our readings for tomorrow. So we'll start off the Saturday morning at 0 and gets up to 2, while Daegu and Busan will go top at 5 and 10 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island and Dokdo will be mild at 8 degrees, while Mount Kumgang will be quite cold at -6 degrees. Well, that's all for now. Michelle Park and Here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that does it for us for this week. Do have a great start to your day or a safe drive home. This has been Daniel Choi.
And I'm Nai Han Kyung, wishing everyone a happy weekend. Daniel and I will be back next week. Bye-bye for now.